I think I must have orgasmed like, I don't know, like 70 times.
Whoa. You're listening to Fucks Given,
the one about polyamory 101.
Hello, Reed.
Hello, Florence.
How's things going?
They're going okay. I just had my birthday, my 33rd
Hey,
birthday.
happy birthday.
Ooh, thank you. I did feel like the motherfucking birthday girl. Actually,
did?
This whole week, I really fucking did. It was immense. I had such a good time. Yay. Oh, and big news. The first birthday in 11 years that I haven't done drugs for.
Oh my God. That's actually something worth, like, that's big.
That is big. That is
I'm proud
so
of
big
you.
for me. Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Yeah, that's
I'm
fucking
so
incredible.
Proud.
Yeah.
And I feel fucking great.
Somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
I feel so good. Yeah.
Yay.
I'm getting somewhere. It's been a tough old journey, but I'm getting somewhere.
Okay, so to start things off, have you done anything wild on OnlyFans last week?
Oh, so I've been really getting into full body nylon stockings.
Oh my God,
suit type things.
I saw a picture of you that Jacob had taken on Instagram last week.
Oh,
and you were in.
it's like
you were in a tight.
Yeah, I was in tights. I was in pantyhose.
But
I was in like
all the way up.
Yeah. It feels so good, Florence. It's like a textured latex. It's like it's so tight on your skin. You know when you're wearing tights and you do that thing over your knee with your nails?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and it like feels insane. It feels like that but on your whole motherfucking body.
Wow.
Bro. It is so good. So yeah, we were having some play sessions in that. It was, oh my God, the nipples. I cannot tell you how good they feel. It is on another level. Because my sensitive nipples can't handle direct contact unless it's perfectly right. So when I masturbate at home, it's always over a t-shirt or something really tight and thin. Otherwise, it's too intense and too much. And I really have to communicate that to my partners when they're doing nipple play with me. But this, with the tights material over my nips, was insane. It was insane, Florence. Oh my God, and the body tickling. My like armpits were sensitive. My armpits are rarely ever sensitive, and I was losing my mind. Florence, it was so fucking good. So I've got like, I don't know why or how, I've suddenly got 3 of them. 3 of these full body stockings. Because I just got so excited.
I don't know why I find them so funny. Like, I really like creased when I saw that picture because it just looks so cute as well. Like, you just look so cute, like tied up in your little full body stocking. I don't know what it was.
It's like a full body bondage situation. It's like like full body latex.
Is it
I'm
like
obsessed.
fully over your hands as well?
So I bought 2 different ones where it's like there's one with like mitts where I can't. Yeah, it's just like, and the other one's like gloves where I've got hands. The other one I think is handless.
Wait, so is this content on OnlyFans?
Of course it is. This content's on OnlyFans. There we did a really amazing scene where I was tied up on a chair and there was a lot of like, edging and tease and denial and it was so fucking good. Yeah. So that's available on OnlyFans. Cool. Very exciting.
That's very cool. My update on that side of things was, for the first time ever, I think I got cum in my. Well, I did get cum in my eye.
Oh my God! Oh, Florence, I feel you so hard.
But it
cum
made for some great OnlyFans content in terms of like
those images.
It was great photos, a little video of just like the after effects of this amazing sex session. But
after seeing your photo, I would pay any money to see that come in the eye.
I wouldn't even open my eyes until I was like going to the bathroom, like blind, like trying to figure out like how I was gonna get like the water, because I just didn't want it to get in.
Yeah. Did you get? You didn't get pink eye though, because when it goes actually in the eyeball and you've got millions of sperm trying to impregnate your eye, it's fucking painful. Your whole eye goes red.
I like squeezed my eyes like so tight so that like it would just kind of like go out.
Yeah. I
I
mean, the
don't know.
power of the eyeball, it protects.
It
you know?
worked. Yeah, it
Yeah.
did work. But anyway, I am so excited for today's episode, all about polyamory. Wait, that is, yeah, it's polygamy that people say the wrong, and I'm like, I
No,
just need to make sure.
polygamy. I swear, my old phone tried to cuck me because every time I would write polyamory, it would autocorrect to polygamy. To polygamy, and I would write that on my stories, and people would be like, "Is that really what you meant?" I was like, "Sorry, man, I didn't even notice." Shit. So yes, polyamory is what we're talking about. Non-monogamy is part of the whole conversation today, and we're very excited to get our guest Leanne on. So yeah, shall we get her on?
Let's get her on. Leanne, it's so good to have you on the podcast. Hello.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I've seen your videos on YouTube for ages, so it's a bit it's a bit surreal to be here. So yeah, really really nice to speak to you guys.
That's so lovely. We love that. Beautiful. So for the curious fuckers who might not know who you are, please tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Leanne Yao. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm an educator, influencer, advocate with a primary focus on polyamorous and non-monogamous relationships. So, kind of I talk about how to start them and maintain them, common misconceptions about them, what people can learn from polyamory, regardless of your own relationship style or orientation. And I'm a bisexual Chinese woman of color. I have diagnosed autism and ADHD. So on my platform, I also talk a little bit about queerness, gender, sex positivity, neurodivergence. So the sprinklings of those as well alongside the polyamory. I'm also in training to become a sex therapist. I do a lot of kind of workshops, lectures, panels about polyamory. Yeah.
Oh, love this.
And I've been actively non-monogamous since I was 17, and yeah, I just love talking about sex and relationships. So that's why I've turned into a career.
That sounds so
love to
amazing.
hear
I love that you're like training to do the relationship therapy on the side of everything as well. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I also have followed your content for a while and I fucking love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, this
It's
is like a
some
mutual
good
fan
stuff,
club here.
Leanne, to warm everything up, we'd love to ask you the fuck that changed the game.
I think the fuck that changed the game for me was the first time that I had high sex. So specifically sex when I was on weed. And I'm not really someone who kind of partakes in, I guess, substances like on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I kind of like to do it as a treat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first time I tried it was, I think I was at uni. I think I must have been in my second year. And yeah, like kind of someone gave me an edible at a party, and I tried it. And then that same night I met someone and then we hooked up, like in my flat, and it was literally incredible. Like I think I must have orgasmed like, I don't know, like 70 times.
Whoa.
And because normally I come like maybe like once, maximum twice, like if I'm sober. Like actually now that's changed a lot. But back then that was what I would normally expect. So then even the lightest touch, like he would like brush my ear and I would come. And then like he touched like just my elbow and I would be orgasming. It was insane.
Wow.
And so I was just like, this is like opened possibilities beyond my imagination. I'm based in Bristol now. Like I've been living here for the past like 2 years, and Bristol is kind of the weed capital of the UK. It's known as like the Portland of the UK. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Nice.
Like a lot of kind of artists, poets, like artistic lost souls that come here. And, I think the kind of culture does come with that. And so like I've discovered recently that as I've had more high sex, it's actually also changed how I do sex sober. I don't know what it is, but it's unlocked some kind of wiring where I'm able to tap into that part of me that's able to just unlock like 50 orgasms. And now I'm able to do that sober as well.
That's yes,
fucking insane. Bloody hell.
It's got to be body comfortable,
so
right?
jealous. I remember when I had high sex for the first time. I'm also someone that doesn't really do drugs like that often at all, and it's just like once in a blue moon. I have like a weed vape here that I take sometimes since cannabis is legal
Oh,
in
Florence,
California. But I've only had high sex once in my life, and it was this incredible experience. I found that I had like a really long extended orgasm that felt like it was happening for like
Forever.
5
Yeah,
minutes or like
Yeah.
something crazy.
No, that happens as well. It's really long orgasms, but lots of waves. Like it's, as opposed to kind of just one peak and then it kind of goes down again. It's like here's a wave, and then the wave, like the end of the wave is higher than you were before, and you just kind of keep escalating. So it's like one big orgasm, but lots of little mini orgasms in the middle of the big orgasm is kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, so that was wild, and I think that changed the game for me in terms of just like knowing what my body was capable of, and like kind of tapping into that whatever mindset that I was in at the time that gave me the capability to do that, and so now I'm able to do it sober as well, which is honestly the greatest gift.
It kind of that's so cool. It kind of makes sense though, because obviously you do have to get to a level of like relaxation and like not in your head about an orgasm coming, because part of like what stops us from orgasming is thinking about it too much.
Yeah,
so I feel like
so
if you unlock that when you're high, like I kind of get it. It's like, oh, it just like, it just comes and you just let it come. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think as well, when you're high, you focus a lot more on like sensuality, so then you focus a lot more on just the sensations of like caressing skin, hand through the hair, like whatever, like things like slow down a lot more, and I'm wondering if that also leads to like a bigger kind of build up. High sex is incredible. I recommend it.
It doesn't work for everybody, but it can work for a lot of people. I suppose it's a bit like when people do chemsex, or when they have to drink alcohol to be able to enjoy the sex. A lot of the time it's because we are so caught up in our heads, and we feel shameful or embarrassed, and I think that sometimes drugs and alcohol can take that layer of shame away from us and like lowering our inhibitions? Is that the right term?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good point that you make, Reed. Like it's, I think it's really useful as a tool for kind of helping you, unlock these parts of yourself, or, release these inhibitions that you have. But I think the moment it becomes a crutch is where you start need to be being a little bit more careful.
Like when you can't have sex or pleasure or get into bed with somebody without taking something, without drinking alcohol first, or having a joint, or like doing a line. I think that's when you are using it as a crutch. So you just gotta be aware, you know? Gotta be aware. There's a balance. There's a healthy balance, guys.
And we've all been there as well, I think, when it comes to like using alcohol or other drugs as something to make us feel more comfortable in ourselves. But yeah, it's definitely a journey it's kind of your self-confidence, I think, as well, and just being like, oh, I'm actually capable of doing this sober. And once I started having sober sex, I mean, I'm pretty much sober now. I don't drink, so it's like, there's no other option for me. Like I just want sober sex is just so fucking good. I like just love being in the present, like not in my head, and all that stuff. This is definitely like a strange tangent, but very, very interesting.
Love it. I love this, because you're so right. It's like when you get to a point where you start having sober sex feels 3,000 times better than what you ever had with alcohol sex, or like if you're using drug sex, but it takes a while to get there. I could never fuck when I'm drunk or high, because it just feels so shit. It just doesn't feel good, and it feels like a waste, but it took years to get there. Yeah, really fascinating. You're right, we're not talking about should we go back to polyamory?
Yeah, let's go to polyamory. Okay, well, to dive in, why don't we just ask the basic question: what is polyamory, for anyone that doesn't know?
Yeah, so polyamory is a subset of non-monogamy. So non-monogamy, I think you guys have talked about non-monogamy on the podcast before, where, non-monogamy is just any kind of relationship that is not monogamous, not kind of sexually and or romantically exclusive. And polyamory is a specific type of non-monogamy where instead of kind of most open relationships where you have one romantic partner, but kind of both of you can sleep with other people and have kind of casual relationships, polyamory specifically involves multiple loving connections. So yeah, kind of you can have multiple romantic partners. You aren't limited necessarily in the kind of depth and intimacy that you can share with others. There isn't necessarily a hierarchy in terms of like having kind of one primary partner. You know, like yeah, there is the opportunity for more equality or equity like across the connections that you have, and yeah, there's a lot more kind of flexibility in the relationships and connections that you can cultivate. So that's what I would define as polyamory. There's multiple different types of polyamory, but it's the only type of non-monogamy where multiple romantic relationships are involved as opposed to one romantic and multiple sexual.
Yeah. How did you what was your journey with polyamory, and how did you kind of realize that was the style of relationship that worked for you?
So I think my journey started when I was like in sixth form, so like 16, 17. I was dating someone, and you know, we were in a monogamous relationship, and to this day it's still the only monogamous relationship I've ever been in.
Wow.
And like that at the time, you know, we ended up dating for about a year, but at some point in the relationship he cheated on me. And at the time, I was really upset. I was like very upset by the betrayal. This was like my first relationship and his first relationship, so it was devastating.
Yeah.
But like something that really stuck with me at the time was that he didn't ask me. Because like when we were talking about this whole thing, you know, like I was in tears and everything, and I was just like, I just don't understand why you didn't ask me. If you just asked me and trusted me that you were going to do this, then I would have been okay with it. I don't understand why you didn't just ask me.
Yeah.
And he was just like what? Like he just kind of like looked really astounded that I'd even kind of, you know, that this had even been an option that he could take.
Yeah.
And I was like, does no one else think like this? And like I think also another dimension to this was that like the guy that I was dating in sixth form at the time, like he was like really into theatre, and he was always in a lot of plays, and whenever he was in a play where like, you know, he was like a leader role, like he'd have to like kiss someone else on stage, like I always found myself getting really excited. Like I would go and see the performances, like I'd kind of, you know, really kind of cheer them on. Like I even tried to befriend the girl that he like kissed on stage. Like I wanted to like have my own kind of dynamic with her. I was
I'm feeling this.
and so, you know, in a very weird way, like kind of, even though obviously it was not a real dynamic because they were doing it like for theatre, and so kind of there were various signs kind of looking back that, you know, I thought about relationships in a different way from other people. And you know, with the whole cheating, like obviously like it was devastating, but it wasn't devastating because he slept with someone else. It was that he didn't trust me with the information, that he wanted to sleep with other people. We didn't have a conversation about it. So yeah, and then, you know, the relationship I had after that was open, and
that's,
you know,
quite a big thing for like back then as well, and just like people weren't talking about non-monogamy and like being open, and like how did you even know that it was like kind of okay and a thing that was like, I don't know, that it even existed? Yeah,
so I didn't know that other people were doing it. I think this was just, I thought that, you know, open relationships were a thing that I just kind of come up on my own until I realized that like other people were doing it as well. But I think a part of why I wasn't just kind of doing what everyone else is doing is kind of partly because I'm autistic, and I think there's not enough research on this, and there needs to be, but you know, there's like a massive correlation between the non-monogamous community and the neurodivergent community, like particularly like autistic and ADHD. Like, you know, everyone in my current like friend group, you know, like everyone I know who is non-monogamous, like in my kind of network, is ADHD or autistic or both, like me. And you know, and I think that when you are neurodivergent, you already, or when you're queer, right, like you already exist outside of a lot of mainstream norms, right? Like you want to fit in, but you couldn't even if you tried. And so at some point you just kind of learn, well, like, fuck it, you know, like, if I'm not able to be accepted, if I'm not able to do the things that other people do to fit in, then I may as well just do what makes me happy.
Yeah.
And so I think polyamory is a big part of that for me, where I'm like, well, fuck your norms, you know, like, I'm gonna do my own thing that works for me and work for the people that I'm connecting with. And I think being able to shed that, like, like at an early ages, because I already didn't give a fuck, basically.
There could also be a huge link, especially with autism, with the like the binary thinking behind it, where it's almost like cheating doesn't really come into it, because that can be an emotional fear. So when it is so like factual, when it's like, well, obviously that I know that you love me and you love, like, so if you had sex with somebody else, that's fine, as long as it's just clear and we talk about it and discuss it. There's almost like no fear around. Of course there can be fears, but lack of fear when it almost like makes sense in your brain.
Yeah.
Like we are animals, of course you would want, like, I want to do this, you'll want to do this. You know, we are put on this earth to spread and fuck as many things and have as many babies as possible. So like, why would people stop that and prevent it and have a problem with it? It's like, yeah, that very sort of black and white thinking.
I definitely resonate with that. And actually, you know, when you talk about like the emotions versus logic situation, in my second relationship, the one that was open, you know, we were long distance, because at this point we'd finished school, and I decided to take a year out, and he was starting university in America, and so we were on like literally different continents, and the conversation about opening up was initiated by me, you know, and it was fortunately like reciprocated, you know, he also wanted it, but basically kind of the reasoning that I had at the time, when I was like 17, 18 at this point, was, well, okay, we're in a long distance relationship. We're both horny teenagers. We both have sexual needs that we want to get met, but we're not going to be able to see each other for extended periods of time. Like, at that point in time, we would probably, you know, see each other once every 6 months, like, if that, you know, like in person.
Wow.
And, you know, we knew that that was going to be very hard. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to resent you for not being able to like have sex with me because you're in a different country and that's not your fault. I don't want to break up just because I want to have sex with other people. And I don't want us to lie to each other and cheat on each other in order to get those sexual needs met. And I don't have a problem with you sleeping with other people. In fact, I would really love it if you, you know, let loose like during Freshers Week and did whatever, and, you know, just told me about these experiences that you were having with these other people. Like, I'm very excited for you, and the people that you're going to meet.
Compersion.
Yeah.
It's like compersion, where you're like, what makes you happy makes me happy. It's the teamwork, it's working together. I want you to have exciting sexual adventures, and I want you to talk to me about it because they're exciting for me as well.
Yeah.
Fuck. I did a similar thing with my second boyfriend, where I really heavily encouraged him to do porn. I was like, I want you to do porn, like fuck other women. And he did a couple of shoots, but it like I never really clocked until you said about having sex with other people. That's so fascinating, because it happens in different ways, doesn't it? It's like some couples are like, oh yeah, I don't mind if you get bought a drink at a bar by another guy, that's cool. Or like, yeah, of course you can flirt and sext on fucking MSN or some whatever it is. You know,
MSN.
Yeah.
I feel like I relate to that as well, because of in my like first like proper 2-year relationship, I ended it because I wanted to have sex with other people, and I just didn't realize that there was another option. And obviously I still loved him, I still really cared about him, I still really liked our relationship, but I was just like, I'm really horny and I want to fuck and I want to have more experiences, and it just didn't compute to me that I could have a relationship and do that at the same time. And it's quite sad thinking about it.
No, it's coming back to me now. I was like, you know, the last thing that I want, like I said to my partner, I was like, the last thing I want is for you to feel like I'm holding you back. You know, if there's a pleasurable experience that you want to have, if there's something exciting, an opportunity that like you've been offered, like the last thing I want you to think is like, oh, I would love to do that, but, you know, my partner wouldn't like, and to resent me for that.
Who am I to stand in
You know,
your
I didn't
way of
want
an
that to happen.
exciting, amazing life experience? You know, like, do it.
Yeah.
Report back.
No, precisely. Yeah, exactly. So that was, you know, it was very much a practical decision at the time. And, you know, but yeah, over time, like I've transitioned from kind of being in like sexually open relationships to polyamory. I would say I've been practicing polyamory for the past 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
And, yeah, you know, like, and I can't remember whether there was a specific point where I was like, let's let go of the romantic exclusivity element as well. Like, I think at just some point along the line, I was like, do I actually care that much? Like, not really. Because at a certain point, right, if you're open and you're having sex with other people, particularly you start like hooking up with people on a regular basis, like the same people on a regular basis, you know, inevitably like some emotional intimacy does form, right? Like you like them as a person, you know, presumably, and you have good sex, presumably. And, you know, and so yeah, like there is a bond that is created, and so like the distinction between like whether it's like a friends with benefits thing or like, you know, potentially like there's romantic elements to it, like does it even matter at the end of the day? Like as long as I'm still happy and fulfilled in the relationship, and you know, you're not just kind of running off being super irresponsible, like yeah, again, it's the question of who am I to hold you back. So yeah, like I think the boundaries there kind of got slowly I guess like eroded or kind of let go of over time, and now I just kind of fully embrace like multiple partnerships and obviously encourage my
You're
partners to
so
do the
right.
same.
'Cause like with I have a primary partner, but I'm also seeing a fuck buddy, but that's still a connection, that's still something there. And it's not fair to say that it's just non-monogamy, that it is an element of polyamory. And I feel like I've definitely changed the fact of me saying I am poly because I'm afraid of maybe what my primary partner might think, or I say primary partner, I'm afraid of what Jacob might think if he thinks that I'm having a connection with other people, when in reality I am already having that connection. It just depends on what level of a connection you feel that is. Like, how different is it from liking somebody and being attracted to somebody to falling in love? You know, where's the cutoff point? Because those lines do blur. I'm really fascinated about this. This is really blowing my mind right now, people.
Yeah, and like what you touch on there is actually a concept called relationship anarchy, which is sort of related to non-monogamy, where basically relationship anarchy is not a relationship style. It's more like a life philosophy, where you know, I think the word anarchy can be like very scary for some people, but like, you know, because people are like anarchy, chaos, but no. So so relationship anarchy basically says like it puts forward the theory that, you know, all relationships are equal. And not in the sense that you need to treat everyone the same, but that there isn't an automatic hierarchy of your romantic monogamous partner is like number one relationship, and then, you know, you must like always defer to them, they are your first priority at all times, and everything is below that, because we see a lot of people you know, neglect their friendships like when they get into romantic relationships. You see this happen all the time, right? I think everyone's had a story where like their best friend like started hanging out with like their partner, and suddenly you just didn't see them at all anymore. Basically it says like, don't do that, you know, because all your relationships are valuable in different ways. You get different things from different types of connections, and romantic love is not like the only type of love that is valuable and worth kind of striving for, and that is like serious. And it also talks about like, you know, customizing your connections with people instead of worrying about labels like, oh, we're friends with benefits and therefore friends with benefits do these things, or like, oh, we're friends and we're not allowed to cuddle or whatever. You know, to just kind of really tailor make your individual connections with people, whether they're platonic, romantic, sexual, familial, professional, domestic, you know, or whatever. And so it's a concept that ties in a lot with polyamory in terms of questioning like the hierarchy of relationships, particularly as I think we're living in a world where like we're kind of really encouraged to place everything on one romantic partner. And it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of expectation, and obviously I'm not saying that everyone should have multiple partners, like I don't think that's necessary at all, but I think it's what people can learn from polyamorous people is having like a varied support network, like multiple people to lean on for support and to also support them as well.
Yes.
You know, like a variety of intimate relationships, however you define intimacy, so that like you can explore different facets of yourself, you can grow as a person, you have multiple people to hold you accountable and to take responsibility, and you just have a more fulfilling life in general than if you like kind of just locked yourself in with one person and, you know, were necessarily kind of limited by what that connection could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
wow.
is fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Like,
this is
wow.
it's just such good advice in general to everyone. I really do believe that. I think we always end up neglecting friends and stuff around relationships, and it just happens quite
Yes.
naturally because of just like hierarchy, social norms, what we've kind of expected ourselves to be like in relationships. Okay, I wanted to go back to something quite basic, but what do you think about the myth of polyamory just being a free pass to cheat? What do you have to say about that narrative?
Oh, that basic bitch
Yeah,
question,
so-
man.
Yeah, I mean, you know, gotta deal with them. We could have a whole episode about polyamorous misconceptions, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
you know, on my website I have an FAQ section, and there's a section that's like common misconceptions, and I've made videos responding to every single piece of bullshit that I've ever gotten on my page.
Wow.
So
That's
you get a lot of stuff. You know, like people going like, yeah, like it's just a free pass to cheat. You've never experienced true love. You know, you're only doing this because you know, you just like you don't have enough self-esteem to demand a monogamous
Jesus
relationship.
fucking Christ.
What?
You know, like yeah, like you know, you're gonna die of AIDS.
Wow, that's
like
fucking hell.
Cool.
yeah, like
Thanks.
you know, or like you're only doing this because you're bisexual. You know, a lot of kind of conflation of stereotypes between those two groups, and like yeah, so a lot of kind of like bioessentialism, various things. So I could talk about this all day, but yeah, like I think that people approach polyamory and kind of like thinking about polyamory from a very monogamous lens because we grew up in a mononormative society, right? So like we're taught that you know, love and commitment equals monogamy, that, you know, when you're in a relationship you need to take like these steps, like you know, living together, having kids, getting married, etc., like to validate the commitment and devotion in your relationship.
I love that, to validate the commitment. Yeah, fuck, you're so right.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a very set path that you have to go on in order to feel security in this relationship. But you know, the more you rely on the structure of your relationship to feel secure, like the less secure you actually are. Because, you know, ultimately it doesn't mean anything if you're like, oh, I've got a ring on my finger, therefore he loves me. No, it doesn't. Like, not necessarily.
Not necessarily, yeah. It's sometimes it can just be a bit fun and like party and enjoy stuff. If you're feeling like if he's not putting a ring on it, then the relation, you know, he's never going to commit, the relationship's over, then there's the problem.
My therapist always says how the security that we get from relationships is all an illusion. There is never any security in a relationship because we're all just individual human beings, and we can never fully commit to anything. Life is ever changing, emotions are ever changing, and the only thing that we can ever be secure in is ourselves. We're the only thing that isn't an illusion, really.
Yeah, like I think that there's a very high risk of getting complacent, you know, once you're in a relationship. You're like, oh, I've you know, we've gotten married and therefore, you know, we're done. We've reached the end of the line, happily ever after. I never need to put any work into this ever again.
Yeah.
And then that's how like things start to atrophy, and you need to constantly work on things. Obviously relationships shouldn't be like super difficult, but they do require effort, and love is a verb.
Yes.
And so anyway, so people approach thinking about polyamory from a very specific mindset, like where they're like, well, love means this, and therefore anything that falls outside of that is wrong. And when people equate polyamory to cheating, you know, they're not necessarily thinking about the fact that like, you know, because to them cheating is like having sex with multiple partners, right? Like having sex with someone outside of your relationship is cheating.
Yeah.
And they can't envision a world where you would tell your partner, it's okay if you have sex with other people. Even like, actually, I encourage it. Like, I would love it if you had sex with someone else. Like, because they can't empathize with that feeling. They're like, so, your partner must be cheating on you and you must be crying yourself to sleep every night. And, you're lying if you're saying that you enjoy this. And there's also actually, like, I think as a woman, well, women asterisk, gender is complicated. But as a person who was socialized, like, as a woman, I suppose, there's an element of misogyny to this as well. Like, I think people assume that, like, as a woman, I should be, kind of less sexually aggressive, I don't know, like, than a male partner, that I need to be like monogamous and be like marriage and kids oriented, and I shouldn't be kind of thinking too much about sex.
Also, if you're thinking about sex and wanting it elsewhere, then you are the slut, but it's okay if the man does it. Yeah.
Exactly. And people are always assuming that it was my partner's idea.
Yes.
Like literally me and my partner, I think, Reed, you liked the video, so you must have seen
Yes.
this. Like, me and my partner were interviewed very recently for like a big news outlet thing, and they were interviewing us about our relationship, and we were talking about the we were talking about the concept of compersion, and then like someone put in the comment section saying like, she's constantly looking at him while she's talking, which suggests to me that she's looking to him for approval and she's not actually comfortable in this relationship style. And then someone responded being like, she literally does this for a living. And I also responded just being like, I'm looking at him because I think he's hot. Like, why are people projecting so much?
Projecting that projectiness. Fucking hell, that's unreal.
But people do this regardless of gender. As, like, for women, they're like, oh, if you're the one, like, you must be super insecure, like, your partner's just walking all over you.
Yes, you're the bitch of the relationship.
You're the victim.
Yes.
Yeah. But people do this for men as well. Yeah. Like, either they're like, oh my god, you're such an asshole, you're like this hyper Chad alpha dude who's just like fucking over everyone. Yeah. Or they're like, you're a beta simp cuck.
Bitch.
Who,
How can you
like,
let
who just
your girl
like,
do that?
what man would let your girl do that?
It's fucking nightmare.
You control your woman.
Yeah, control your woman.
Yeah.
I cannot. My ex was literally asked that question by his mates. Was literally just like, how can you let her do that? And he was like, what do you mean? I'm not fucking letting her do it, like she's doing her own thing. He was so shocked. Yeah, fucking wild.
Yeah. I'm really curious to know kind of how things work really well in polyamorous relationships. And you were talking about how obviously there's honesty and trust, and that involves a hell of a lot of communication. How do you make sure that you are communicating with all your partners? And do you have like tips for people that are wanting to get into polyamory in terms of how they should communicate with their partners?
I think to start, right, like when you pretty much depart from the norms of what are expected in relationships, so you very much have to assume nothing. And people who move from monogamy into polyamory, like particularly if they've been like, in the same monogamous relationship for a very long time, are more likely to struggle with this, because when you've been in the same relationship for ages and it's looked a certain way, suddenly having to like, demolish and renovate the entire thing is a really destabilizing experience, right? Because if you constantly defined your relationship by like, oh, they're not fucking other people and that's how I know they love me, suddenly when you start fucking other people, then they're like, how do I know they love me? And so I think that's the initial thing to get over, like, to understand that like this is a big transition, it is a scary process, and it's like not a decision to be taken lightly. And also that people who were compatible when they were monogamous would not necessarily be compatible if they were non-monogamous. So because there's so many different factors that go into it. You might practice non-monogamy in a different way, you might want different things out of it, and those needs may not be compatible. But to answer your question on communication in relationships, I mean, I think this could span like so many different things, but I think that when you have multiple relationships, you obviously take on the freedom of having, like so much autonomy to like pursue these connections. but you also have to take on a lot of responsibility. So by responsibility, I mean like, you know, balancing the needs of your partners, you know, and like sticking to the promises that you've made and the agreements that you've made, renegotiating like if things change or you feel differently about something. And with the decisions that you make, you also have to think about how they affect the other people in your life, right? And that doesn't come easily to people, I think, like, particularly because we're taught to like build our life around one person. We often just like, oh, we'll make this decision with this like primary figure in our lives, and then everyone else has to accommodate to that. Whereas if you have multiple intimate connections, like, I mean, you should be doing this regardless, but like I think it's especially pertinent if you have like multiple intimate connections. Like, yeah, these affect people on an emotional level much more acutely, and you need to be considerate of that. I find that people who have poor boundaries, or who don't like sufficiently advocate for themselves, like in relationships in general, really struggle with maintaining multiple relationships. Because say, for example, someone has two partners. One partner gets really jealous and insecure about the fact that like they have another relationship, and they start being somewhat controlling. They start trying to limit the amount of time that they spend with the other partner, and this obviously affects the other partner, right? And you know, if you're trying to you know, be considerate towards everyone, right, obviously there's nothing wrong with being jealous or insecure. People like, you know, like have wobbles, that's fine. But it's one thing to be jealous and insecure, and it's another thing to like, you know, kind of do things that really harm other people, and not just like the other person your partner's involved with, but also like how your partner feels like about that relationship, right? And ultimately it's about like asking yourself like what you actually need in the situation, what you're actually threatened by, and kind of having conversations about it. But the person in the middle who has these two partners, like if they have poor boundaries, they might just roll over and be like, oh fuck, you know, my partner's having a crisis, you know, I'm just gonna capitulate to all of their demands, you know, fuck my other partner's feelings, I'm just gonna like do this to placate them, so then I don't have to deal with disappointing them or having a complicated conversation with them that might lead to conflict because I'm really terrified. And this will really fuck over their relationship, and also this other person who's now being pushed out or is being unfairly treated. And yeah, like their needs aren't being equally considered in this situation, which is a shitty thing to do, like in whatever scenario. So, you know, basically it's about finding a balance, right? Like, yes, you're jealous and insecure. What are the requests that you're making of me? Okay, I can meet these requests, you know, but like there are these things that might affect someone else, so I can't do that. Is there a different way that we could approach this situation? And then going to the other partner and being like, hey, my partner's struggling with this thing, you know, kind of let's have a conversation about how that might like what's coming up for you as well. And yeah, it's a lot of management. It's a lot of emotional management. So you know, like when people tell me shit like, oh, you know, like polyamory is such a cop out because like you don't want to put in the work it takes to maintain a relationship.
Fuck, bro?
I'm like, the fuck are you talking
It's like
about?
triple
Like,
the fucking...
I'm up to my ears in maintenance right now, bitch.
It is,
like,
it is unbelievable amounts of
Ridiculous.
maintenance. But it also shouldn't diminish the fact that if you are non-monogamous or polyamorous, then that's just a given. It's like it's not an option. Oh, I don't have the time or capacity to manage all of these relationships. It comes with it. It's part of it. It's what you enjoy about having these relationships. Just like how in a monogamous relationship, it is part of the relationship that you argue and fall out and repair and fix things. It can be exhausting, but like you do it because you love it so much. It's part of it.
And arguably I think that you know, these kind of skills need to be implemented more in monogamous relationships as well, but I think people just don't have the opportunity to, because oftentimes like monogamy, like from what I've seen of kind of how monogamy is like traditionally practiced, I guess, like monogamy is not so much about just dating one person. Like it's also about like, you know, to an extent, mate guarding, like ensuring that there are no threats to the relationship, like outside of it, right? So, you know, if you have a friend who you might be getting like a little too close to, then you need to kind of like limit that connection so that your partner doesn't get pissed off. And you need to like, you know, there are certain things that you can't do in order to kind of maintain like this kind of, I don't know, the sanctity of that bond or whatever. And yeah, like there's a lot of kind of holding yourself back from exploring XYZ so that you don't create conflict. Whereas in polyamory, I think it's not about kind of shying away from that conflict. And sometimes there is no conflict, but, you know, like if there is, you know, you talk through it, and rather than seeing the conflict as the issue, or like, you know, whatever created it, it's like, oh, like, let's explore our feelings around this, you know, what are our values, and kind of how we're gonna kind of like stick to them and have a good time. There's much more of a like a conversation around it, whereas I think in monogamy the tendency is, this makes me uncomfortable, therefore you need to stop doing that.
I find everything you're saying so fascinating, and I wish we had hours and hours and hours, because we have so many questions. I feel like polyamory is just, it's such like
endless.
a launch pad to talk about relationships, and like, but relationships and like how, I feel like it's weird because it teaches you how to have a monogamous relationship in a really good way. Like everything that you've been saying is so relevant to every single person's relationship with themselves, their friends, their family, their loved ones, their partner. Like it's just all so relevant. And I really wish we had more time to talk to you about this. But to wrap up this episode, Reed, is there anything else that you wanted to ask about polyamory before I ask the fuck off story?
I really like this question here, which was, what's your top tip for poly babies or baby polys? Poly babies, that doesn't sound right. My words are getting all twisted up today. Baby polys. If there are people listening to this episode and want to get into being polyamorous, is there anything you can recommend?
Yeah, I think definitely do your research, right? Like, you're making a big step, you're, you know, going against the grain, and that's scary regardless of whatever it is that you're doing. You know, understand that you have to do a lot of work on questioning what you've been taught about relationships and sex and love and exclusivity and what it means. And it's not an easy process, so also be gentle to yourself, and, you know, obviously do your best, but it's also okay if you make mistakes at the start. I think you don't have to be perfect at it from the get-go. You know, do your research. There's lots of books out there. There's creators like me who post about this on a regular basis. Get like a breadth of resources so you can formulate your own opinions. But also, you know, theory can also go so far, and when you kind of take it into practice, there might be a lot of unprecedented situations that come up that you deal with, and, you know, you might potentially fuck up. But like we said earlier in the episode about conflict, like the conflict isn't the issue, it's how you repair from it and how you communicate through it. And, you know, if you have those relational skills, then, you know, any conflict that does come up, like, you know, doesn't have to divide you from your partner or create insecurity in your relationship. And ultimately, I think it's important to be true to yourself, because if you are doing this with a partner, for example, like, you might have very different ideas of how you want to do this. And yeah, obviously, you know, make compromises and agreements where you can, but also it's okay if, like, the relationship doesn't work out, because you want different things out of the dynamic, because there's lots of different ways to do non-monogamy as well. And like, having support from people who you're not dating is really important, like people who know what they're talking about. So yeah, like, you might be fortunate enough to have a local community you can tap into. You might be able to look online, join some groups, that kind of thing. Or you can talk to me and other creators who offer
amazing
some form
advice.
of peer support, coaching service, like if you don't have people to turn to.
They do good meetups as well. There's like poly meetups that are going around London. There are apps that you can use to find like-minded people, but it takes time. It's not a quick answer.
And not everyone lives in a city as well, so it can be challenging.
Give
for some
yourself
people.
some time to get it right. Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
amazing.
Well, to wrap up this episode, I would love to ask you your fuck off story.
Sure. I have a great story. Strap yourselves in, guys.
Okay.
I'm so ready.
Strapped in.
So this was while I was at uni. I was very, very close friends with this friend of mine, Bex, who is non-binary and grew up in a Mormon family.
Wow.
And is no longer Mormon. Obviously, and you know, but like do you find this, like, I always find like religious trauma babes are like the ones who are like the horniest, but
yeah.
like
I have a friend that would agree.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, so this friend of mine, like, you know, like left the Mormon church. They have a wild and crazy story, but like, you know, super kinky, and they really love to use kind of religious imagery as like part of their kink practice. You know, the kind of incorporating elements of that, like partly as a kind of rebellious move, but also because there are a lot of themes in it that are just kind of sexy, right? Like the worship,
or like the
and
fetishization.
rituals.
Sometimes you just can't fucking help it. Some actual situation when you're younger makes it into a fetish, and there it is. You're done.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bex had like a partner who was ex-Catholic and also had like a very similar kind of journey, and so both of them were like super into incorporating religion into kink. And I was like relatively close with them. Anyway, Bex calls me up one night and is like, hey, I would love you to participate in a scene that I've devised for my friend. And I was like, okay, what is this? And they're like, I'm doing an exorcism. And I was like, oh, tell me more. And basically kind of how it went down was like Bex puts a lot of effort into their kind of practice, like of kink, like the scenes that they devise and things are very, very, they put a lot of effort into it. And they were like, okay, so like the idea is, you know, like this ex-Catholic friend of mine, like they, you know, they've sinned, you know, like they're like sexually impure and they need to be cleansed. And so we're going to do a ritual and you're going to be part of the audience, you know, at this ritual. And we're going to like, you know, like basically like cleanse them of this impurity and, you know, like baptize them and stuff, and it's gonna be like a whole thing. And they were like, how do you feel about reading the Bible out loud while I do this? Wow. And I was like, this sounds so funny.
Yeah.
Like this is great. I would love to participate.
I must do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like if nothing else, like I wanted, like I do a lot of things for the story, you know? Sometimes like I get like a wild opportunity on my doorstep and I'm like, I need this just so I can tell the story at parties, right? Anyway, so
do it for the gram.
Imagine this. I walk into the room. The whole room is completely dark except for like 100 these tiny tea light candles that like light the room. Right? It's lit by candles. There's like my friend had prepared a playlist, like a 3-hour playlist of Gregorian chants. And so you walk into the room, it's dark except for candles, and then there's like kind of music like in the background. And you know, like Bax is like in a nun's habit.
Wow.
And they also got like another friend who was like dressed like a priest. And there's like seats like around the room. So like I sit down, I'm given a dog-eared copy of a Bible. And the scene starts, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on. You know, there was like some whipping. There was kind of, you know, like chains were involved, like frozen chains were involved. There was like a lot of kind of like impact play, like, you know, involving like in like kind of like like beating like the sin like out of someone kind of stuff. And then there was a lot of like ritualistic like marking. You know, there was kind of some like trigger warning. There was kind of some needle play involved, with like kind of scratching like words like across their body. There was there was kind of some wax play. We eventually used the wax to like kind of drip it like on their body in a kind of like ritualistic way. And then and then towards the end, it ended with like a baptism, which was basically kind of a bit like waterboarding.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And so that was like super intense to watch, and I was just there like, you know, at the certain points like I was cued to like flip to a specific page in the Bible and read out passages that Bex had highlighted. And there was a passage from Revelations called The Beast and the Prostitute, which I read out loud, and that was like, you know, that was just contributing to the overall vibes of the situation like while I was there. And so, yeah, I didn't like directly participate. I suppose, like, I did a bit of the wax play and stuff, but I just kind of was there to like observe.
You're
I
still
think there
part
was like
of
a
the
big part
fuck.
of like
You're
the
still part of
sure,
it, for sure.
fine,
You
yeah,
are.
like it was, yeah. I very much felt like a passive observer, but I suppose I was active in the sense that like I provided the kind of audience vibes for like the sub in the situation to be perceived and feel. I don't know, like it's an exhibitionism thing. Maybe it's like a shame kind of thing that's like turned into a kink. So yeah, I remember like just that whole experience being so. I walking out of there, I felt like I just kind of, like walked into like a different dimension because it was just so well constructed, and I'll never forget it. Like I think it was definitely like a lot of the stuff that happened in there was very much out of my comfort zone, but I was glad to have seen it, and glad to have just witnessed the marvel of like how much could go into a scene and how like amazing it is and how immersive it is when it's pulled off really well, and yeah, I just learned a lot from that experience, and I often kind of bring that out as like a bit of like a shocking story because people are like, oh my god, like there's kink and then there's this, so that's my fuck off story because people definitely do go like, oh my god, what?
That might be one of the best ones.
That
might be one of the best fuck off stories that we've ever heard on the podcast. That is up there with Sophie Anderson and the shit sleeping bag.
What? Okay, I need to listen to that episode.
Yeah,
you have to listen to the episode. Find Sophie Anderson. It's the most wild fuck off story we've had.
It's the most wild episode I think we've ever.
We are waiting for somebody to top that off the leaderboard. Like I don't think it's possible though. Like no one can, and I don't know if anyone should.
No.
Where do I rank? What, top 5, top 10?
Definitely top 5. I would say top 3.
Oh wow! What an honor! Thank you.
That was fucking amazing.
So sexy.
I would love to ask you so many more questions. I feel like if the audience have more follow-up questions to this topic that we've been talking about today, why not let's get Leanne back on and have more conversations about that. I feel like this has just been so enlightening for me. I've enjoyed every single second of this. I'm like an avid learner, just like sitting here
I feel like
give
I've gone
me
to school. I went to Poly school, baby. I'm gonna get a gold star.
Yeah, because I almost feel like this is going to bring more questions up for people in their relationships, and I'd love to know what the follow-up questions would be from our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I would be absolutely down to come on again if you'll have me, and if people want to learn more. But yeah, I go back to what I said, I think that everyone has something to learn from polyamory in terms of kind of breaking away from just relationship norms in general. And I encourage everyone to design your own relationships, whatever that might look like.
We want happy, healthy relationships.
Yes, we love it. And it's such a shame we have to wrap this episode up and be done with it. But where can our curious fuckers find you and your content?
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Instagram, but I'm also regularly posting on TikTok, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and Twitter. And my handle is the same across all of those platforms. It's Polyphilia Blog. So that's POLYPHILIABLOG. I also have a Twitch channel, Polyphilia, where I do some casual gaming streams sometimes. Ooh. I have a Patreon where I do more deep dives into my content and personal life. I sell polyamory merch. I also have a peer support service that I mentioned where you can book a chat with me to get support and advice about your non-monogamous relationship. You can find me Polyphilia Blog pretty much everywhere.
Fucking amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. And curious fuckers, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it far and wide. Everyone needs to listen to this.
Yes, and of course you can keep up to date with everything we get on with on our Instagram stories, our Instagram in general, at Come Curious, as well as our personal accounts, Reed Amber X and Florence Bark. We are on Twitter as well. We're on Patreon and OnlyFans, motherfuckers.
And let's not forget YouTube, where you can see all our pretty faces.
That was the main Mac Daddy site. We're fucking YouTube. You can see us on YouTube.
I don't know why you always butcher the ending up so much.
We do.
Remember to leave a rating and a review so that we can get this message and this podcast into more people's ears. And until then, see you next Thursday, curious fuckers.
See you next Thursday. Bye. Bye. Bye.